Hi there, welcome to my new build. Now this is a really classic design and something a little bit different for me. This is going to be the Tomboy Senior and it's a 48-inch wingspan, classic design for 2-3 channel radio control or free flight. So there's no ailerons on the wings. And this was designed for a Mills 1.3 diesel engine. And I just happen to have this lovely old Mills engine here, which I can't wait to get in a plane and see how it flies. But there's no reason why you couldn't put a glow in this or even convert it to electric if that's what you want to do. But if you've got a lovely old Mills hanging around, then that's ideal. And I can't wait to see this in the sky with that 70-year-old diesel engine pulling it around. Now the Tomboy Senior is an adaptation of a very old design. It was originally designed by Vic Smeeds in 1950 and it was just the Tomboy, and it was a 36-inch wingspan and it was in Aero Modeler magazine. And the Senior, the Tomboy Senior, which is a larger adaptation of that, was adapted by David Boddington and it was published in Model Flying in 2008. I think the original Tomboy was probably just free flight, so this was adapted for radio control. Now these great set of plans by David Boddington were downloaded from the Outer Zone website, and I said that they were published in Model Flying, and also along with that there was a great article by David Boddington outlining the build of this plane. It doesn't give you everything you need, but it gives you quite a lot of information that helps you through the process. And information like saying that actually this is quite a tail heavy plane, so you have to think very carefully about not making that tail even heavier during the construction, and actually thinking about how you're going to get weight up there in the nose. And that'll be important knowledge when we come to fit the radio gear. And what we'll do, as we've done with other builds, is just check before we put the radio gear in to see where that natural CG is, to make sure that if necessary, which is probably going to be the case, we need to put everything way up front. Now I think one of the things I'm going to do first is build the wings and the tailplane, probably the rudder as well, and then I'll do the fuselage. I quite often build the fuselage first, but with this it just seems to lend itself to having the wings done first. And well, I don't know, maybe maybe not, maybe you can build the fuselage first, but that's the order I'm going to do it in. Now there's a few issues with the plans, or not issues, but things we need to be aware of, I suppose. Like the rib spacing and the wing length is a little bit out, so when we build the wings I will probably be setting it out just on a building board, not on top of the plans, because at the end of the day, if we've got the ribs and we've got all the trailing and leading edge and spars prepared, we can measure it and set it out. The plans don't really add a great deal. Now on the plans we've got a great set of templates here for the wing ribs, but also for the tail ribs as well. And I will show you those in a minute and how I'm making the ribs, because I've started to pull some of the balsa together, started making the ribs, but I'll show you that in just a second. The formers, cross formers, hopefully you can see, I apologise if you can't, but the cross formers 1, 2, 3 are shown, so they've got the firewall and then these formers. It's worth noting though that there are 2 F4 formers, and actually this one here is really F2. It's just been labelled wrong. At the front here you can see that the battery is indicated in this area. Now I'm not sure how you're going to get the battery into there, if that's what you need to do to get the CG right, because the former, which is actually F3 but labelled F4 for here, only has these really small holes in it, and I don't think that's going to be big enough to get a battery into this space. So we need to be mindful of how we're going to do that. We could put a hatch underneath. There's no reason why we can't, and if we need weight at the front, the added weight from building that hatch is going to benefit us really. So that's what we need to be mindful of as well. Now if we look at the tail, we're going to need to think about how this rudder under here is secured, as well as the fin. The plans don't show any sheeting on the bottom side of the fuselage or the top, but clearly we're going to need to have something if we want to have those secure. So that's something that we'll need to deal with when we come to building this section. Now, as with all plan builds, there's going to be lots of head scratching, lots of thinking, things we have to interpret ourselves, and the golden rule, as I always say, don't trust the plans, don't trust the measurements. So when I build the fuselage, I'm going to be doing the two fuselage sides, one on top of the other, but I won't be doing any of these formers until I've got the fuselage finished, and then I will measure the fuselage and cut the formers to fit. If I cut these out now, build the fuselage, I might find that they don't actually go together very well. Now, you can see there's some stuff on the bench here that I've already started working on, so we'll take a quick look at that now. Right, well, another chance to show you that lovely Mills engine, which is going to be great to get in this plane. I need to sort out a tank because I don't want to have a separate tank. Originally this would have had a tank at the back here, which has long since gone, but I'm going to get something or make something to do the job. But that'll be great, purring away. Lovely 70-year-old Mills engine. Now, I've started to build the ribs, and as I showed you on the plans, there are two templates, one for the tail, the tailplane ribs, and another one for the wing ribs. Now I've stuck both of these templates onto 3mm plywood and cut them out. I then made a second identical template out of plywood, and so I've got the two, and I can sandwich between those pieces of balsa slightly bigger than the templates like these, and I can bolt them together. See, I've done it already with the wing ribs here, and then I can sand these. I just get my sanding stick and I just make sure that they're all a perfectly smooth wing rib, and so I think there are 20 wing ribs in here, and I've cut out the bird mouth at the front to take this 1/4 inch piece of balsa. Now I've also put in the cuts for the spar. There's a single spar on the bottom, and that is, let me just look at the plans because I can't remember, it's 3/16 by 1/2 inch balsa, and I have already prepared that, I think. Yeah, here we go. So there's the central spar that I've created already, and I've put in two vertical cuts using my razor saw, you can see there, and when I unbolt these I will just take out those pieces of balsa using a scalpel and fit each individual rib by hand onto the spar, and you'll see that when I come to build the ribs. If you're interested in a video just about building identical ribs like this, have a look in the description below this video, and there'll be a link to a video that shows you just how to make ribs. So I've got the wing ribs, they're done. I'm going to take those apart now, and I'm going to bolt these together and create the individual ribs for the tailplane. I've made the dihedral brace out of 3mm ply, really easy. I just measured this really and just cut it out. Maybe slightly oversized, but when I come to join the wings, because you have the central section and you have the two outer sections, I will make the central section and then I will probably have to sand this to fit so that it's not sort of too big. But we'll look at that when we come to build that central section and the wings. Now, I've been working on the spars. This is the rear, sorry, not spar, this is the trailing edge for the tailplane. And what I've done is, on the plans it shows individual slots. Hopefully you can see those slots for the ribs, tailplane ribs to fit into, and they just fit in like that. But I've measured these individually to make sure that they are all spaced exactly the same size, which they weren't on the plans. Now, to cut these, I've got to use a technique with a razor saw like this, and essentially I put on a piece of thin ply, which I think this is 2.5mm, and if I put that onto the side and just clamp that on like that, I can then use this to cut slots of a known depth. And if I get to the point where it stops cutting because the balsa is resting on that plywood that's on the side. So this just gives me a depth of 2.5mm cut here, and you can see when I've done that cut, it just sits on that plywood there. It's a technique I've shown in lots of other builds, so it's not new to this build. Now, I've still got the trailing edge for the two wings, and you can see I've clamped these together and I've marked where I'm going to put those cuts for the wing ribs. And as I said, I'm just going to use my saw, my razor saw. This is a 42 TPI razor saw, and just one cut, two cut, and then I'll get a scalpel and I'll just pick out the bit that I've cut. And if I go along and do this all the way along, it will give me a standard depth for all of those. Now, these aren't the correct ribs. The correct ribs are here, but I'll use one of these just to show you, and that just fits in there like that. So I'm going to get on now and start to take these apart, and I will get these ribs built, and then we'll come back and have a look at that once it's done. Right, well, I've now got all of the components finished to create not only the tailplane but also the two wings and this central section. I say all of the components, there's still some 3/8 soft balsa to go on the ends, but I haven't done those, and I'll just cut those to size once I've completed the wing and stick them on. It'll be easy to do. Now, if we look at these, here we can see the trailing edge, the spar and the leading edge for the tailplane, and I've now done those ribs for the tailplane as well. And just like with the wing ribs, bolted them together, I've put the cuts in, and I just need to remove the balsa when I take these apart so that they fit onto the spar. Now, I know I could do it at this stage, and whenever I do anything with ribs like this, I always cut them out, and somebody always says to me, why don't you just do it while they're in the sandwich, just do them all at once. There's no reason why you can't, it's just as good. I just prefer to do them individually like I've done with these ribs for the wing. Now, the balsa I selected for the tail, because as I mentioned earlier, this model is suggested to have a heavy tail, and it needs to be light. So I've selected the lightest balsa I've got. Now these days it's difficult to get really good soft balsa, but this was the lightest I had, so hopefully that will keep the weight down. With the spars I've had to get some hard balsa because I want that nice and strong. So that's ready for the tail plane. Now I've got the trailing edge here for the main wing, which, as you saw earlier, I'd marked out, and I just used my razor saw to cut these together so that they are absolutely identical with the same spacing. I've got the two spars, the two leading edges, again hard balsa so it's nice and strong. I've got the pieces, again trailing edge, spar and leading edge for the central section, and that central section has the dihedral brace built into it as well. It actually goes against the central spar. Now there's quite a big dihedral on this. It's a 4-inch dihedral at the wingtips, so that'll be interesting to set up. Now the ribs that I showed you earlier when they were still in a sandwich are all ready now to be part of the build for the wing. I've tried to select relatively light balsa, but there is a little bit of a mixture here because they were from different sheets of balsa that they were cut. And what I will do is I will divide these into two, and I will just put these on the scale and make sure that I haven't got a disparity in weight. And I'll try and organise them so I've got the lighter ones, that's a lighter, more medium bit of balsa, and I've got perhaps a heavier one. So what I'll do is I'll organise these so I end up with two wings the same size essentially, same weight, sorry, essentially. So it's really important to think at this stage about our balsa selection and how that could impact on the finished plane. Last thing we want is all of the slightly heavier bits of balsa to be on the one side and not the other, and end up with a wing that's not evenly distributed in weight. Ideally we should select all the timber from very similar sheets so they all work out the same, but as I said, sometimes that's not possible with what you've got or what you can get. Now I really love this stage of a build. You've finished one model, you've got it out your workshop, you've cleared everything off, and you're starting again, preparing the components, getting everything ready to start laying it out and gluing it together. Now I know this is the bit that a lot of people don't necessarily like, but I love it, all the preparation. Now these wings should be a fairly easy build. It's just two basic wings joined together with a central section and that big dihedral. No ailerons, no locking mechanisms to hold the wing onto the fuselage because we're using elastic bands and dowels. Now the building of the wings is going to be the next video. The whole focus of the next video hopefully is to get those two wings and get them joined together. Depending upon time and how quickly that goes, we may also get the tail plane built, but we'll have to see on that. So I hope you found that useful. I hope you're going to enjoy the build of this Tomboy Senior. I hope you come back and see how we get on. Now just to finish off with this video, I'm going to play a little bit of video showing this lovely Mills 1.3 1950s engine running, so you can get an idea of what's going to power this lovely 48-inch wingspan Tomboy Senior. Thanks very much for watching.